Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads. Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Hope everybody's having a great week. Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. This is episode 35. Jamie Eads joining you as always. Once again, hope you're having a fantastic week. We have a great interview with you today with just one of the great drummers in the country of Russia. We will be joined by Sasha Mashin in just a moment, just a smoking jazz drummer over in Russia. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Be right back. The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cabos drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cabos Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cabos difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cabos make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cabos Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cabos Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cabos Drumsticks, visit them online at loscabosdrumsticks.com, follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cabos Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cabos Drumsticks. All right, as I mentioned, going to be joined here in just a moment by Sasha Mashin. What an inspirational story Sasha tells us. Grew up in Saint Petersburg, Russia, living in Moscow now, but really you will find it very interesting, at least I did, his life story of how he became a drummer and just a student of the art form of jazz and how he is bringing that to the citizens of his country there in Russia. He joined us from a short vacation in Greece. There's a couple of audio issues in there just because we were communicating across the world, literally. But I hope you enjoy this. So help me welcome Sasha Mashin to the Drum Shuffle. Good morning, Sasha, or I guess good afternoon, Sasha, from where you're calling from. Thanks for coming on the Drum Shuffle.
Oh, thank you. I'm in Greece, so now it's not morning right now. It's around 5. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's early morning for us, and I certainly appreciate you taking some time out of your vacation, your time away from drumming to come on the show. It's been hard to get you scheduled. There's just been a ton of stuff going on in my life. That's my fault. But thank you so much, Sasha, for being so flexible and coming on our show. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor and pleasure. Thank you for your invitation.
Oh, yeah, we're glad to have you. We're really excited about this one. Sasha, what we typically do, we like to hear how folks get into drumming. Obviously you grew up, you and I are the same age, first of all. You grew up in Saint Petersburg, Russia. So I'm sure it's going to be a little bit different for all of our, majority American listeners. It's probably a different story. So tell us how you became a drummer.
Oh, that was a funny story because I got a gift from my grandma. She brought a toy drum, and I hit it, and with the first stroke, I just destroyed the drum head. And my mother says, "Oh, look like Sasha gonna be a musician." And after that, they brought me to the music school, and there was competition. I was the teachers they asked me clapping some rhythms, singing melody, and the end. All of them was ready to take me to their classes, but the most funny comment was like, "But look at his lips. He gonna be a trombone player."
Of course.
Yeah, and I was when I was. And the final decision, and I went to the T-bone class. And soon I found out that T-bone class is overbooked. And I was as a candidate for half a year. And then another guy came to the class for the music drummer and says, Sasha, would you mind to go to drum class because T-bone class is overbooked? I said I didn't mind, and thanks God, yeah, I got to the drum class. So that was not my decision actually. I was just lucky, I think, because yeah, that was my.
Well, so, I mean, growing up in, I'm assuming this is in the 80s, you and I are the same age. You would have been school age in the 80s. Of course, being from Russia, communism was still, prevalent there. I mean, Russia had not become a democratic country yet. So, so you were actually told what instrument you were going to play. I mean, am I correct in that, or am I being ignorant?
No. You can choose, of course. You can choose and says that like I like to play guitar or some other instrument. Nobody gonna force you to play to choose the class. Maybe they can give you some advice. But then during the studying at the facility, you got a lot of strong advices like what to do and what not to do. So there is not much freedom in that Russian approach to study music. And not only music and not only 1980s. It's coming back now. And we going back to USSR right now with our president and with all that. You know what I'm talking about.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. There is not much freedom, and that's why actually I get out of the. I was kicked out of the music school 2 months before last year. I was there for almost 7 years, and the reason was that instead of concert with the school band, I went to the jazz competition and get first prize as a drummer. Our band get the first prize as a band, and we got first prize for the arrangements. So all first prizes. And then I went back to the music school and brought all that papers to show my teachers. Look what I got. And they said, you have to go to director office. You have to talk. The other drummer who did it perfectly. So I didn't let anybody down. But after that, I decided if they not really happy about all my activities as a young musician, maybe there is no place for me in these facilities, in this school. So I just left. And I left music school direct to the jam session, to the jazz club.
Sure. Well,
and stay there.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. I have heard some of your music. You are a fantastic drummer, but there's a lot to talk about there. You got this, kind of formal education. You went out on your own to, kind of a jazz showcase competition. As you said, first prize all across the board. And that led to some resentment, it sounds like, from the formal school.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about is, obviously you've been over here to the States, you've played at the Blue Note in New York. You're just doing wonderful things. You just had a big jazz festival. Do you have goals of coming to the U.S. and staying permanently, or are you sort of being an ambassador of jazz music in Russia? What role do you see yourself filling?
It's really hard to. I still have thoughts going back and forth about it because, of course, to play jazz music, you have to be in New York and communicate with all the great musicians. But competition is so high in New York that you probably never get to the best players. But in Russia, on the other side, I can produce concerts, events by myself and bring great musicians to Russia to play and support great music in Russia, which is right now work for me better. Even if I'm struggling to survive in that kind of society, which is not really open-minded, free, and all that, the political situation in Russia right now, it's just awful. So, society is not really, really happy when some people like to be free, like to be themselves. So, I think for now I'm staying in Russia just because we just launched a new jazz record label in Saint Petersburg, in my hometown. And we released just first album, which is my album. But we have a long list of artists to go to the studio, and we have 5 albums we are working right now, and we're gonna release it next spring. So I think for now I would say for me it's better to stay here and trying to bring new wave for the jazz, because in Russia jazz it's mean black singer and caravan.
Right.
If you don't, if there is no caravan or black singer, there is no jazz. So we with this Rainy Days label, we're trying to bring new wave and bring more good instrumental music to listeners, because they actually never have a chance to check that kind of music, because promoters are trying to bring all and over again singers, and we have only that kind of music in Russia right now.
Well, that brings up a really good point. Your record, which is called Outside the Box, it is due for its American release this week. It is slated for release, I think, on September 14th. Now, your American publicist sent me some preview tracks, and I've been listening to it, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's just
thank you.
It's great music. Now, it brings me to a really good question. I think, a couple of good questions. Number one, how did you, growing up in Russia, how did you discover jazz music? Because I don't think it was as easy as going into a record store and buying a record. I think it was probably a little bit harder for you to discover that music. And secondly, what is the reaction that you're getting bringing jazz to Russia and really putting a spotlight on that musical style?
It's not even when I was start to interesting with the jazz music. That was not really hard to get jazz music. I was buying cassettes and brought to special place, and there was pirate copy guy who can put records from the LP to cassettes. That was the way how we were getting our first records.
That is so cool. That is so cool. You know, I mean, because I knew that you weren't just going to a Sam Goody's record store, but you know, somebody had the LPs and they're literally making mixtapes basically for you. Yeah,
and to have LPs, you that was risky, because if police come to your place and find that you have like LPs with jazz music. It can be case to bring you to the court.
Unbelievable.
I mean, not in 1980s, maybe before, but still, you know. So, yeah, there was amazing guy Nathan Lattis in Saint Petersburg. He was a collectioner, and he was first director of the first jazz club in Russia, which was built 1958.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and that guy Nathan, he has all kinds of jazz music. The best. His musical taste was absolutely amazing. So every week I came to his place and trying to copy as much music as possible. And then we were copying it again, because you are lucky if you can make a first copy from LP, but the other people was dealing with another cassettes. So when you make like 20 copies,
the sound quality,
sound quality. So when I first time get a Love Supreme CD and actually listened it for the first time with CD quality, I was shocked, because there was much less information than I was thought. Because of the quality, I was listening all the time. Through that bad quality, I was dreaming there is something else.
Right.
And that was shock. And what was the second part of the question?
Well, you know, I mean, what is the reaction that you're getting? I mean, so obviously, I don't know much about Russia. You know, I mean, I've never been there. I want to visit, but I've never been there. But, you know, there is so much, the word, I guess, is propaganda that we grew up with in the United States about this is how it is in Russia. Look how terrible it is, you know. So it was ignorant of me to say, you know, jazz is this new art form. I mean, I know it's not in Russia, but I think guys like you that are creating a jazz label, you just did a jazz festival a week or so ago. You know, what is the reaction? Are the people in Russia, are they hungry for more jazz? Are they hungry for rock? I mean, I'm curious as to how, you know, music is received. People like you that are bringing music to the masses nowadays. What is the reaction of your fellow citizens?
I think even if we have propaganda again really strong right now against the US, people still like good music. They don't care. Like if jazz from America, they don't think it's something bad.
Right.
They still love it. And what I've noticed that the better music, even if it's modern jazz, hard to absorb, that kind of jazz, they still can read it and they still love it. But most of the promoters, they just trying to be safe in terms of bringing singers to be sure that all tickets will be the concert hall will be sold out. They just don't care. But we, with this label, we're trying to bring modern music, because we have a lack of that kind of jazz.
Sure.
But for rock music, of course, it's more popular music in Russia than jazz music. It's obvious. It's like everywhere. And but in general, people in Russia, they have a taste because of the culture, not like Soviet culture, but real old Russian culture, like if we're talking about a period of time before revolution, like all composers, Russian composers, like, I don't know, Tchaikovsky, Glinka, Mussorgsky, Stravinsky, Shostakovich, Prokofiev, all famous painters who worked with Sergei Diaghilev.
Sure.
If you heard about Russian season in France. So that culture is still somewhere there.
Sure. Well, I mean, I have a 13-year-old daughter who is, a pre-professional ballerina. So believe me when I tell you, I know all of the composers you just said, because, she is really, she's focusing on, Balanchine type ballet, it comes from that Russian tradition. So I get that side of the art of Russia, but I don't get the musical side, modern music, rock, pop, jazz, things like that. So hence my question. But I want to change gears just a little bit, because I'm curious, what type of, mixtapes or cassettes were you picking up as a young formative drummer? Who are some of your big influences from that golden age of jazz drumming?
Oh, okay. I started with a cassette with a Russian guitar player, and that's how I get famous with the jazz music. And during the time when I was still studying at music school just get first drum set. Because in classical Russian musical school, there is no drum set. There is a lot of marimbas, vibes, timpani, all that kind of instruments. But there was no teacher who can explain how to play drum kit. So I started doing by myself at the kitchen with all that pans and spoons, and my neighbor heard that sound, and he came to my door and asked, do you play drums? And I said, I just started. And he said, we have a band. Can you join us? We play jazz. What jazz? What is the jazz? Okay, here's the cassette. Listen it. If you like, let me know. That was a record with a Russian guitar player, Alexei Kuznetsov. So that with an American drummer, I don't remember his name right now, but I was really impressed with the music. So I started to collect music and joined this band, and all these band members was really hard working on the manufacture to save money to buy drum set for me. Can you imagine?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And then we start to rehearse on the stairs in our building. Neighbors was so happy about live music, surprisingly. And then I start collect some other music. And the first and the biggest impression was I think Buddy Rich.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then at that time I went to my first official band. I was 16 years old or 15 years old. I don't remember. I started really early. Like at 16 years old, I was gigging and traveling around the city, around the country. So I was playing Dixieland, and I was really into Buddy Rich and all his amazing solos. I was transcribing them and trying to play this style.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember in Saint Petersburg there is main street called Nevsky Prospect. There is famous old store, and we were playing Dixieland on the street next to this store, and my bandmates, they gave me solo each song just to attract people to put more money to the band. That was super cool because I was just practicing all the time on the street. So then I met another people and start think about more modern music like Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie Quintet, and Max Roach, of course. And then after a few years, I switched to Miles Quintet with
course.
Tony, yeah, and all that stuff. And after that, I got a present gift for birthday, LP album of John Coltrane. I think the name is Africa Brass. Yeah, Africa Brass. In the Russian version, it was just Africa. So I started to listen to this, and that changed my life forever. That was groundbreaking, changing. So I was absolutely shocked. And at that time, I already had a Walkman cassette player with reverse. So which means the cassette can go side A and then start play side B immediately. So I put same record of John Coltrane to each side, the same record, because LP is around 45 minutes. So the side A is a Love Supreme, side B, a Love Supreme. In this case, I don't need to spend energy from batteries to rewind, you know?
Right. So you just lived with that record.
Yeah, not only this, all Coltrane quartet records, and I was listening during all the time. Even when I went to come back to my house, I was switched on music, and while I was sleeping, Coltrane still played all night, and that was for maybe a year or maybe a couple years like that. So I didn't listen music only when I was rehearsing. That was only one exception.
Yeah. So you burn that record up, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I mean, I think we all have those favorite records that define us as young players. You know, for me, it was probably, you know, one of the Led Zeppelin records. You know, I'm a rock guy. So, you know, same kind of thing. You put on, you know, Led Zeppelin 3 or Led Zeppelin 4, and you just listen to it over and over and over, and you just soak so much of that stuff in, you know. So, I mean, your influences are fantastic, obviously, but, you know, I think your journey, you're living in Moscow now, correct?
Yeah.
So, So at what point in your career did you make the move from Saint Petersburg over to Moscow?
Yeah. We have a famous saxophone player, Igor Butman, and this guy back to Russia from New York, and he was looking for a new band in Russia. And that's how I moved from St. Petersburg to Moscow. I started playing with Igor, and that's it. But I think even without Igor, it's going to be the same, because St. Petersburg, surprisingly, really conservative in terms of jazz music. When you look at the people, maybe they look more modern even than in Moscow, but for the jazz music, St. Petersburg more conservative.
Okay. Well, I mean, that makes sense. So and in looking at your, list of credits, you have performed with just a who's who in jazz music, Benny Golson, Clark Terry, Jimmy Heath, Kenny Barron, Lou Tabakin, Eddie Henderson. I mean, all of those gigs had to be just amazing for you, right?
Oh, yeah, of course, absolutely. That was, see, this is why sometimes maybe better be in Russia. Because can you imagine for a young guy in New York, just another drummer in New York, to get all that names to play with? It's hard.
Right.
It's hard. So, yeah, I was lucky. I think I was lucky.
Well, I mean, clearly, I think you are, I think the comparison that you're making is in Russia, you are the A-list jazz drummer. When all of these guys come over to do a show, they want Sasha on the drums. Whereas if you came to New York, there's the list is 500 A players for jazz drumming, right? So I mean, I totally understand that. I don't live in a huge metropolitan area. I live in central Kentucky, and I've been very lucky myself that I'm attached to a good recording engineer and producer, so when he needs a drummer, he calls me, here in my area. So
amazing.
It's great, and I'm close enough to Nashville, which is the country music capital of the world, that I can do some work down there as well. But to be one of the first guys mentioned in your geographic location versus being the 483rd guy mentioned in your geographic location, it does lead to some unique opportunities without a doubt. Sasha, talk to us a little bit about, some of your goals. I mean, obviously, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on there in Russia with the new label. You just did a huge jazz festival. What does the next year or so hold for you? I know your record is coming out. Are you going to be doing some touring over here in the States, or are you focusing primarily on Russia right now?
I'm focusing on Russia right now, but I have a plan to come to New York maybe next February. We'll see, maybe for another record. But right now I'm working on my second album, which called Happy Synapse, and the idea behind this is that all our thoughts in the brain, they have a electric chemical nature, right? So when one cell goes need to connect to another, it's go through the synapse, which turns electric signal to chemical. So if you don't have right chemicals in your brain, you're either slow or depressed or unhappy. So I thought, is it possible to change this sound in music? I think it's possible, because some people says that if you are really sad or even depressed, maybe if you will force yourself to smile, it will change your chemicals.
Sure.
So it can work either way, both ways. So I think I thought it's a good idea to make these projects and play music, which probably I hope will make people more happy and feel better. So for that project, I have Benita Gonzalez on the piano, Josh Evans. Josh right now playing in the Christian McGrath band, and Rosario Giuliani from Italy, from Rome, amazing alto saxophone player. And I have Makar Novikov, my dear fellow bass player, friend. We play a lot together, Russian guy. And another guy is Dmitry Mospin, amazing tenor sax player from Moscow. So this is my new project. We already did record session two weeks ago, maybe a little bit less. Right after that session, I went to my vacation. And after I will come back to Moscow, I will start to editing and think about, Also, I have a lot of stuff like, because I have a lot of endorsement like Yamaha drums, Evans, Zildjian, Vic Firth. They asked me to make for them unique content, because there is tons of information on YouTube right now, but not so many young people in Russia talk English. So for them, I'm doing right now a series of lessons. The first season is just for beginners, with support of Yamaha and Evans. It's going to be interesting because we thought not only about content, musical content, but about picture and how to bring the good cinema quality of video, which makes it more pleasant to absorb. Sometimes young generation can read through the through the pictures, not through the words they hearing, but through the art language. So we was thinking a lot how to make it really good cinema. Like it should be like cinema. So I hope it will be really, really nice.
Well, I think that's just a wonderful gift to give to young aspiring musicians in your native country. Because here in America, I can go on YouTube and learn how to do anything. I mean, me
too, because
if you need to work on your car, you can go look at a video and figure out how to work on your car. I mean, you
tutorials.
Absolutely. You can learn to do anything, but I can see where, learning a complicated rhythm, a polyrhythm on the drum set would be hard in Russia because everybody's speaking English on the videos, right? I mean, I can...
but you can still understand. But Jamie, guess what the first advice when some young musicians coming to my class, like students...
I'm going to guess you tell them to speak English. I mean, I don't. Yeah,
that's right. Because all information in English, so you have to speak because you need to communicate with musicians in the future. So the first rule is learn to English.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when we first got on our call today, you actually said, "I hope my English is good enough for this type of interview." You said, "I'm not used to it." I just want to say, I think your English is fantastic. I mean,
really? Wow.
You haven't said anything that I haven't been able to absorb and understand. So,
that's amazing. Thank you. This is best compliment for me.
Yeah, it's what interests me about drummers that grow up in different cultures than me, is how your The word I'm looking for is arc. From the day you started playing to where you are today, how different that journey must be. And, certainly my show is not a political show, but you've brought up a couple of very, very good points that I at least want to explore. Now, I'm not here to talk about whether the president of Russia is good or bad, or the president of the United States is good or bad, but I want to point out to our listeners that you had to fight to get the music you wanted to hear, and you had to fight to get the gear you needed to play the music you wanted to play, and how real that struggle is in other parts of the world, whereas we here in America, it comes a whole lot easier. There is no censorship really here. If you want to play jazz mixed with thrash metal, by all means, do it. Where you grew up, you couldn't really just do what you wanted. I guess you could, but there were consequences for that. Can you talk about that just a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that Soviet culture I grew up with is a culture of self-limitations and self-limit. For example, it's coming right now again with all that revanchism. I call it revanchism because like KGB guy with all his thoughts came to power and brought all Soviet culture back. And it's some people afraid of talking like in Soviet time. It's again here. For example, if you like or repost something on Facebook, you can get a case and go to the court. Can you imagine? It's exists right now in Russia. So some people trying to just keep their mouth shut, to not have any problem. But when you living in that kind of environment, it's changing your mentality, your brain, because our brain it changed with each new thoughts. We changing it constantly. And when you're trying to not to speak what you think, it's not the what can help to create something or create music, create art. So the concept of outside the box was the little bit dealing with this kind of ideas that we have to be able to speak freely what we think and not being conformists. We need to check everything we hear and be free doing or playing what you like. Because in Russia, when you trying some new ideas, you all the time think, oh, what other people will think about me? This is first idea. What other people will say about you. So I think this is most dangerous situation for the creator. So outside the box means you have to forget about other people, about what they think about you. You have to think about what's important for you, for your art, for your music, and concentrate as much time as possible on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your audio broke up just a little bit there at the very end, but that's okay. I mean, what you just said is, and I want to clarify, you said you worry about what people think of you, and you're not talking about what people think of the music. you're talking about what people think of Sasha the person because you released a certain song or a certain record, which I find very strange. Growing up in America,
it might be in the, about your music also, but we full of criticism here. When you went to the jam session, nobody. Of course, some people can say, "Hey, man, nice playing," or "Sounds great," but really often you can hear somebody come to you after song and say, you try and play like I hear like you probably heard a lot of Tony Williams last week. They trying to criticize you
right.
a lot. So when I just start to go to New York a lot, I mean, not a lot, I probably been there 8-10 times, but I've noticed that there is different approach. People trying to be more supportive to each other, which good for both. And I teach my students to focus more on what's good even in your playing, because when you studying and listen your record, you can say, "Oh, I was not really in time," or "That was not in pocket," or I lose the form. But you can also find good moments and trying to build your building on that, which makes much more sense for me, because it makes you happy, So we tend to go through the negative a lot in Russia. This is part of the probably Soviet time, and I'm trying to to change it.
I think you are changing it, Sasha. I mean, it just such a remarkable story, and what you're doing gives hope to all of us as artists and musicians, certainly. Sasha, I want to be respectful of your time. One of our traditions here on the Drum Shuffle, and I think you will have a great piece of advice to share with us, but we ask all of our guests for a good piece of advice for other musicians and other drummers. Tell us something you've learned over your career.
I think I have one idea which is the most important. I've learned that talent is overrated. Probably you heard about this book. If not, please check this book because it's amazing. I think you can change your mind and change your brain with hard work. It will change on the physical level. So even if you have rough time with results, you're going to drums to drum room practice, and you feel you're not improving a lot. Don't be discouraged. Stay on good idea. Find good idea and focus on this idea as much as possible, because what make difference between good and the best is like 20,000 of hours practice. That's it. Everybody can play. You need to practice, and practice should be really deliberate.
Yeah, that's just great advice.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it's just great advice. Sasha, you are such an inspirational man. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. Folks, the website is sashamashin.com. We will link it up for you. Please go check Sasha's playing out. Just a fantastic drummer. Outside the Box, his record on Rainy Days Music will hit the stores and streaming services on September 14th of 2018. I highly recommend you listen to it. Sasha, you are welcome here anytime. Please come back and talk to us when your new record is done.
pleasure. And thank you so much for having me, Jamie. That was really nice to talk to you.
Absolutely.
And to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. You are welcome here anytime. Best of luck to you over there in Russia, and we will talk to you very soon, Sasha.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for episode 35 of the Drum Shuffle. Thank you so much for listening. We cannot do what we do here without every single one of you guys tuning in. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're using to listen in. It helps us tremendously to continue to grow, and we certainly do appreciate your time in doing that. You are not going to want to miss some of the guests that we have coming up. Next week, we are going to be joined by one of my personal favorites, Brad Morgan from the Drive-By Truckers will be stopping by. They've been in the studio over the past couple of weeks down at Sam Phillips Recording in Memphis. Just got some great stories to share, talk about the upcoming Drive-By Truckers new record. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that. We love hearing from you throughout the week. Keep your emails coming to us. Our email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com. And as always, you can find information on me at jamieeads.com. Again, thank you so much for listening. We can't do it without every single one of you. So until next week, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers.